Welcome to the Multifamily Management Excellence Podcast. Are you interested in learning from multifamily experts and how they achieved success? Then you have come to the right place. Your host, Mike Ballard, interviews industry experts to share their stories and advice to achieving success in the multifamily industry. Our goal is to provide you with resources and tools to increase profitability and achieve success on your own multifamily journey.
Hey, good day, everybody. This is Mike Ballard. I'm a partner in Ascent Multifamily Accounting. I also own several properties on my own as well with some partners. And I am the host of the Ascent Multifamily Management Excellence Podcast, here where we talk about key tactics, key skills, key things you need to think about for running a profitable management company. Today, I've got two exciting guests I'm happy to introduce you to. I'd like to introduce Mary Biehl and Eddie Duke from Steelhead Management on the East Coast. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. So tell us about your firm. What is Steelhead Management? What's its niche? What markets are you in? How many units do you have?
So we've got about 4,000 units. Primarily, it started out as sort of an urban type of brand where we were in downtown Richmond, and we actually work for a developer. So it's kind of a long story, the way the company got started. My relationship with the principals of the developer that we work for started, back in 2006. And the principal was a vice president of some huge company, and I was a property manager in the same area, and we just sort of met and developed a little relationship. And he went on to team up with a buddy of his, and they formed Spy Rock Real Estate Group, and started small, doing some smaller deals to prove their case to their investors, and then ended up doing their first really big ground up deal in downtown Richmond. And I figured that was too big for them to manage on their own, and so they had some.
How many units was it? How many stories? Tell us more about it.
This was 96 units, 3 stories in downtown Richmond, and it was ground up, which was a little bit unusual in that area because most of that is sort of adaptive reuse, old warehouses that are turned into really beautiful apartment properties. So this being a brand new one, they contracted with us when we were with another company, and they kept building, and we kept managing their properties for them, and they hit some critical mass, and they said, you know what? We're spending a lot of money to have this other company manage our properties for us. We feel like if we took this in-house and formed our own company, we would be able to provide better value for our investors and have more control over those assets, and ultimately create a culture that sort of promoted the type of performance that they wanted to see on those properties. And so they formed Steelhead Management and asked some of the people from this prior management company to come and lead it. And they did. It's been about 9 years now. Steelhead's been in existence, and it's really been an adventure since it got started. Mary and I have been, involved with Steelhead from the beginning.
That's awesome. So vertically integrated is something we see a lot of developers do, or owners that buy and rehab properties do. So let's talk about your individual experience now. Eddie, how did you get into property management before Steelhead, before the firm, before Steelhead? Why did you get into that? Tell us about your background.
That's a little bit of a windy road. So I had a less than impressive high school career. And after I graduated in summer school, I was the world's greatest groundskeeper at an apartment property in Newport News, Virginia. And I just loved that job, riding around on the cart, waving to the residents. And I got promoted from that to a maintenance tech. Turns out I'm the worst maintenance tech there's ever been. And my maintenance supervisor really liked me. And he said, you're a great guy, but this is not your career.
You're a people person.
Right. And thankfully, I think the ladies in the office didn't want to work the weekends. And so they asked me if I wanted to cover. And my training was, okay, keys under the mat. When you answer the phone, smile because they can hear it. There you go. So with that amazing level of training, I just sort of turned that into, my job is to connect. And, I might not be able to relate with whatever situation these people are in because I was 18 at that time. But what I can do is I can talk to them. And like you said, it was just about connection. And so I just started, late teens, early 20s. I said yes to everything. If you needed me to travel somewhere, I'm going. If you want to give me an opportunity to take on a property manager job, well, I'm totally unqualified, but yep, let's give it a go. I had my first property at 22. and really, really enjoyed the work. But once I got a little bit more into my career, closer to late 20s, early 30s, I realized my passion wasn't so much with, on site and with our residents. I really, really enjoy supporting the internal team and watching them do amazing things. And so I was working with another company based out of Alexandria, Virginia at that time. And again, I just started saying yes to everything. And so I went from being a
When you
regional manager.
say saying yes to everything, you mean you were willing to accept challenges. Somebody
Yes.
needed something done. You were the guy willing to step up and do it. That's a great trait.
Absolutely. So I went from being a regional property manager to a systems manager, which I don't know what that is. I didn't know what it was at that time, but I did that job. And then I turned that into a training job, and then took over, or created and took over our training department. And then that evolved into talent management,
How big was
which
that management company?
that company at that time was about 8,000 units, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a combination of owner, manager, developer, and third-party contracts. And so that, again, that was the company that we initially started working with, the developer that Steelhead works for now. From there, I had an opportunity to go to another company and work with family and basically start a brand new company, which is where I first interacted with you, Mike. And that was a really great experience. It was all third party. It was such a grind. And, with third party management, anybody who's in it knows that you've got, I had 40 different bosses, and we had the way that we operated, but we also had the way that they wanted to operate, and we had to achieve their goals. And that was just, it could not have been better experience for me to learn from those different perspectives, learn how to underwrite deals and what's important to each client and achieving their goals. And ultimately, that led to me coming back to Steelhead. I never really left. Once Spy Rock formed Steelhead, I kept my foot in the door. I love this group of people here, and I wanted to see them successful. And so just any chance I could, I provided consulting, help as needed. And so after about 6 years of doing that, 6, 7 years of doing that, this door opened for me to join Steelhead formally. And I think everything that I'd done in my career up to that point put me in a position to where I could be successful here. And not the least of which was just having really good relationships with people that saw the world the same way I did from a values standpoint. Because I think ultimately we all rent apartments, collect rent, keep residents happy. I think the thing that really, really determines long-term success is the practice of shared values. That's probably been one of these guiding principles for me is I could do this job anywhere, but am I going to love doing it everywhere? And I can
That's
say,
great.
go ahead, I love doing it.
That's great. Super. Let's turn to Mary. Mary, real quick, tell your background. You're the controller at Steelhead. How'd you get there? What'd you do before that? And tell us about what you're doing now.
So I started off in hotels. I thought that I wanted to work in hotels my entire life. So I started off kind of similar story to Eddie, where I started off in housekeeping and then I turned into a night auditor. And then I got my big promotion to the accounting office where I got to work days. And then I became the controller. I'd worked in probably about 4 different hotels, all within the Chicagoland area. And then moved to Richmond and was still working in hotels and probably worked in another 4 in the Richmond area. And then I just kind of was like, all right, I'm done with hotels. I still love accounting, but hotels are very grinding. You have you're working 70 hours a week all the time. No light at the end of the tunnel. No real holidays because, you have to do inventory and all kinds of stuff like that. And, when nobody else is working. So I was like, I'm kind of done here. And then I worked with a temp agency who said, I think that you could transition into like a multifamily with your background pretty easily. So that's what I did. So I was started off as temp at a multifamily place in Richmond, and I loved it. It was a lot of the same reporting I was already familiar with. At the time, I believe it was about 8,000 units we had. It was primarily conventional We did have some tax credit properties, but I just really loved it. I loved the way it was broken down and the people I worked with. And then I got a call one day from Andrew with Steelhead and said, I think it was Eddie's recommendation, because Eddie also knows my husband, said, hey, we know this girl. So Andrew called me and asked if I might be interested in joining the Steelhead team. So with my background, it just made sense. It was a good move for me. It was a step up from, because I had been like an assistant controller in my last role. So this was moving into, the next level of accounting by coming to Steelhead. So at the time, we only had like, I think 5 conventional properties when I first got here. And I was also helping with the development side, which quickly grew. And so I've been with them. I did take a little bit of a break and went somewhere else for a little while, and then I came back. I'm like, oh, why did I ever leave? So in that time that I was gone is where we learned that takes we needed help in the accounting area, that although you could be a great accountant, it takes a different type of person to do my multifamily accounting. And that's kind of where we decided Ascent needed to come in to get us back on track.
Great. And I'll get to that in a second. I want to ask one more question. Why did Spyrock, Eddie, you said you were with them from the very start, but you weren't an employee. What were
Mhm.
they thinking about when they decided to be vertically integrated and create their own management company? Talk more about what were the pros and cons of them starting their own management company in your mind?
Well, one of the things and part of the reason I love them so much is, they even when they were working with another management company, they felt like the people that were working on their properties were their team. And they just, I mean, they love the people that work with them. And they see it as a real opportunity to work with the kind of people they get to work with. And so I think, that was the start of it is, we love these people. And then from there, it was, how do we provide more value to our investors? When you're with a third-party management company, it's just not going to be 100% of what you want, because they've got to be a sort of a one-size-fits-all deal. And every third-party management company customizes a bit, but there's only so much you can do and still maintain a consistent operation. And so I think that was part of the motivation of saying, you know what? We've got this group of properties and we could take this and pick our people to run these assets the way we'd like them to be run. And we think if that happens, then our investors are going to get more value and they're going to continue investing with us, and we're going to keep doing what we love doing, which is, building these beautiful properties.
So the idea was the culture, it was the control, the be able, the be able to build one brand together.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
great, great.
And I'll tell you, it helped. The 2 main principles. Well, there's 3 of Steelhead, but they all have extensive experience as operators in multifamily, and so they sort of came to the table when they decided to make that decision to start Steelhead. It was because they knew what they were getting into, right? Management can be a real headache sometimes. And when I got into this, I had a full head of hair, and you see this now, and so. But they had their eyes open, and but they knew that with the right culture and the right people, that would lead to really good performance on their assets.
Got it. So now you and I met before you were at Steelhead when you were with another company. Talk
Mhm.
about why you were searching us out and what were you thinking about for that company?
Well, so for that company, when I first got there, it was about 1,400 units, and we were positioning ourselves to grow rapidly. And we knew, and one of the, what's interesting is, everybody wants accounting, that department, to run quietly in the background. But it's such a critical part of the organization that, when it's not running quietly in the background, it's noise for everyone. And so we had a really noisy company, and I was looking for stability and, a company, a partner that I could work with to scale our organization, because while I might be great at bringing on amazing service team members and leasing consultants and so on, Mary can tell you, I've learned more about accounting working with her than I've ever known before. And so, it's difficult for me to pick a really great accounting team with the right skill set. And so that's what I was looking for. I was looking for a partner to scale with and to be able to provide really, really great financial management for all the assets that we were going to be working with. And I just didn't have the confidence that we could do it on our own. And I was right. We ultimately, that company chose to partner with somebody else. It was not my decision, because I would have been going with you guys. So when I came to Steelhead, not the same position, but we were in a position where we were broken on the accounting side, and we needed to fix it. We needed stability, and we needed to be able to have a really good idea of what we needed for that in that department to continue to grow at the rate we were growing. And so you guys were first on my list when it was my call to make 100%. That's what we did.
So you pitched us to the partners,
Yes.
and what was the value proposition you were pitching to them?
Honestly, so it was less technical. It was more gut feeling. I enjoyed talking to you, Mike, and I dealt with your team. We went through the proposal process with that prior company, and I just felt a level of confidence with Ascent that I didn't have with anyone else. And when I re-engaged you, it was like the conversation never stopped. You were the same person doing the same, having a very similar process. And it was just like, I have a lot of confidence. And then, of course, after talking to some of your clients and doing references and so on, my gut told me would seem to be true. And it's, talking to Mary, it just seemed like the right call to go with you.
So that was years. When did that?
Man, so the first time we talked was, I want to say it was one of those NAA events somewhere. I think it was back in 2000 and
Could have been in Denver, maybe.
I think it was Denver. Yeah, actually.
NAA Denver.
When that was 2014, something like that.
15 maybe. I think so. Yeah. So that's great. So then you engaged with the scent, and did we deliver on the promise?
Absolutely. And Mary can back this up. I don't think it would have been possible to do what we did without you guys. I really don't. Mary, for as amazing as she is, she had a heck of a cleanup job to do when she got in here. And, we needed that muscle and experience that came from Ascent.
Right.
It was just critical especially during that, first year that we were working together.
Thank you very much. So now let's talk about managing in this environment, right? The last couple of years have been a challenge.
Mhm.
So talk about what you've been able to do to help your properties survive, because we're seeing, we're hearing stories of a number of clients that are having challenges.
Mhm.
And you work for a developer that opens new properties. There's been a lot of oversupply in many markets. Talk about your experience as a management company, if you don't mind.
I'll tell you, I think this industry, we work really, really hard to overcomplicate things. And ultimately, it comes down to your people. And, our competition is our competition because they have a similar product, similar price, similar location. The only thing that really differentiates one property or company from the other is the people. And in order to get amazing results, you've got to just provide something more than just the paycheck you get every 2 weeks. And there's being smart with your marketing and advertising and all that stuff. But I think the most important thing is building and maintaining and growing a really strong culture. And I think that's been our advantage through COVID, and then even in the years after, as we've got people that I would stack up against anybody in the country.
So how
And
do you build that culture?
I'll tell you, it starts with leadership. And it starts with this, like I mentioned earlier, this practice of shared values and really being able to clearly define what those are. And so it really started with our parent company, Spyrock. And then going to, the first few employees that worked for Steelhead. It's our CEO, Rebecca Bryan, our director of service management, a guy named Pete Rose. They really did an amazing job of laying this foundation for what the company is at that time. I mean, back then, when the company first started, the corporate office was a Starbucks, and there were 3 or 4 people there, and that's how they worked. And I was fortunate, when I left one company and went to another, I had a 3 month time where I was going to be like a teacher and travel and do all of that stuff. And that didn't happen. My wife kicked me out of the house and said I'm creating problems. And so I went to go spend time with Rebecca and with Pete and our parent company principals at Spy Rock Real Estate. And I just, what they, them talking about what they wanted this company to be and how they wanted to operate, it was just, I really, really did not want to make the change to where I was going because what they were saying was just like gospel to me. You know what I mean? It was exactly what I wanted to hear. I believed it to be true, and they charged ahead. So I really have to credit, that small group in the beginning for laying this foundation, and then doing the harder thing, which is being consistent year after year after year with that stuff. It's one thing to be excited in the beginning. But it's a whole different thing to sort of build that over your first couple of years and get other people really excited and fired up about your vision. So I think that was really, really critical in the beginning. And that's just grown from there. You hire people that think the same way and see the world the same way professionally, and you let them do their thing. Give them the tools they need to succeed and just let them be great. And
Got it.
in a lot of ways, that's what Steelhead's done.
That sounds like a great culture. No wonder you've been so successful. So what do you think uh, going forward? What's the market going to be like in the next year to 2 years?
I guess we don't really know, do we? Politics aside, we've got some ups and downs right now. And I think the only thing that you can control is what you can control. We still have people that need a place to live. There's a huge demand for affordable housing. And people still want value in that check they send you every month. And so I think the thing to do is stay the course and do a good job of creating that value. And that's in, creating a sense of community, doing really, really amazing events, not just, everybody does this breakfast on the go thing where, a half asleep property manager is passing out donuts in the morning. It's a whole separate thing to really do events that engage people, and not just the residents, but also the employees, because they're the ones that sort of drive this thing. And so that's going to be a really important thing over the next couple of years, I believe. Our interest rates might go down and people might look to buy a house or something like that. But how many people are really in a position to do that after, a difficult handful of years after COVID? A lot of people are still recovering from all of that. And so I think that's where we believe the multifamily industry is who's going to provide the most value for that check that our residents are sending every month.
Yeah.
And I think I think we do a really good job of overcomplicating things, but people want value, they want a great experience, and they don't want to feel like it's painful to send that rent check every month.
Got it. Okay. Now, Mary, if I could ask you, you're on the financial side of this management company,
Mhm.
and we've got, we work with a lot of newer owners, newer management companies. What are the things that you've learned that you could share to an owner about how to avoid some mistakes or how to do things right?
I think the biggest thing is basically having policies, procedures, checklists. So you're doing things pretty much the same way every time you do them. And some properties have, little things that are different from another property that, have that noted so you don't forget it, each month as you're preparing the financials. Um, Timeliness is a big thing. I've I've walked into places where bank recs hadn't been done in a year. If you don't know where your cash is, you don't know where anything else is.
Right.
So, um,
Stay on top of it. You talked about develop policies and procedures, and this leads me to the next question. But one of the books that I've loved that have helped people with that is called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And he basically rewrote it as The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And it is a great book. And then I watched the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton. I
Mhm.
love that, because it
Great.
talks about the importance of, creating procedures and systematizing your business. So I just recommended the book that I like a lot. What book, Mary, would you recommend to someone? And then I'll ask Eddie the same question.
There's actually two books. One that I just recently read called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero.
Mhm.
And it basically just talks about how humans can get caught up in nonsense, really, and, how to just, put your focus on what's actually important and don't get caught up in the nonsense, the voices in your head. Just things like that you wouldn't think would make a difference, but it actually does in your day-to-day life. So I don't know, it's kind of like a self-help book. I found it really powerful, just a different way of thinking about how you go about your day-to-day.
Great.
And then my other book, I read it years ago, but I keep kind of coming back to some of the quotes. It was the autobiography of Lee Iacocca.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I read that one. I
And
remember that. It was written 30, 40 years ago, I think.
yeah, yeah. And, there's just so many quotes and just the way he thought about things that it seemed really innovative at the time. But some of these just core beliefs people aren't doing. And if they did, it would really help, I think, in their own success.
Great. That's great. Eddie,
So I've got a couple of books. So one is a book called Never Eat Alone by a guy
I
named
read that one too. That's a great book.
That one, I'll tell it's a book about networking and how to be strategic about it. And that one, it just really, really influenced me in a huge way. Another one is Good to Great. That's another classic. And
Jim
that's just,
Collins. I've got it
yeah.
right there. I've got it right there.
And one that you may or may not know about that sort of influenced me. I talk about making sure doing what you can to hire the best people and to really hire people that share your values. And this book called Top Grading by Brad Smart. It's really about an interview process and all of that, and it's very, very it's an intense process the way he presents it, but it really highlights the importance of really getting to know somebody and getting to know not just who they are when they're sort of presenting to someone, but who they really, really are. And that influenced me probably more than almost anything because it helped me to select people that would be a good fit for the company and the company would be a good fit for them. And probably the most influential guy, he's written books. I've not read any of them. A guy named Simon Sinek.
Oh yeah.
He did a TED Talk called Start with Why, and it was the best 19 minutes I ever spent in my life. And the whole idea is it's not what you do, it's why you do it, and that's what people really grab a hold of. And so if you can clearly articulate not just what you do, but why you do it, why it's important. Again, that gets to values. That's how you create followership and culture and all of those things. So that's probably been the most influential thing in my career is that 19-minute TED Talk.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you both for your time today. I think you've shared a lot of insights that could be very valuable to our viewership here. And you built a good business. We've appreciated serving you and with you. And so thank you very much. I'd like to tell our audience if you want any of those books, just send us a quick note. The first person that requests each of those books will send a copy for free. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you to Ascent Multifamily Accounting for making this podcast possible. Ascent has a team of multifamily accounting experts that provide outsourced bookkeeping for multifamily management companies. To learn more about Ascent Multifamily Accounting, go to multifamilyaccounting.com. We hope you have enjoyed listening to the Multifamily Excellence Podcast. If you want to hear more from multifamily experts like this, you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. We appreciate your support and can't wait to have you join us again for our next episode. Until then, take care.